Hello, all beautiful people around this magical, amazing planet. My name is Robert Canis, and this is another Beyond the Courage podcast. And today we have a very, very special guest. I'm super excited. Uh, our guest today is Safa Roberts. How you doing, Safa, today?
Hi. Good, thank you. Glad to be here.
uh, we'll be talking today about pranic energy, about ayahuasca, about your amazing journey through life. I gotta admit, as we spoke privately, that you had quite a life. You have quite a life. You were brave enough to quit your 9 to 5 job and start living in the jungle, in the Peru, in India. And as we spoke privately, it was probably the best decision of your life.
Yes. Absolutely. Like I said, yeah, there was only that decision. There was no other choice to do that. It's a calling.
Would you, would you be so kind and introduce yourself to our guests and viewers? What you do right now? What is your
Sure.
path?
Sure. Um, I would say that I'm a person who's deeply seeking to connect to the heart field and finding different ways to do that. My journey, I guess it began when I was in my 20s and feeling a lot of anxiety and disconnection and hopelessness and all the things that when you feel deep in separation come up as part of life. So I was decided very early on that if I didn't quit my corporate job and make with great urgency, understanding who I am, the most important thing, that there wasn't really much of a life to be lived. So I began studying with a teacher in Vancouver, energy medicine, really originally under the pranic healing umbrella, but I had a teacher that was just so much. mm, I would have done anything for her. I would have done her dishes. I would have done anything. One of those teachers that you'll be sitting with her and she'll just teach you and teach you and teach you all these profound lessons, that go way beyond any kind of curriculum. And every little pearl completely changes your life. And it was through her that I had this big awakening where it was like I was going through a lot of suffering. And it literally, when I went and sat with her, it was like she was lifting these energies off of me. That was my perception at the time. Like there was just space being created. Um, and I was like, wow, that isn't me. All these things, this heaviness, like it doesn't have to be my perception of who I am. And it was just so visceral. And I think after that, I had like 3 days of just like everything being sparkly. And I'm like, okay, whatever that is, I'm going to follow that thread because
Wow.
that's it. That's what I've been looking for since, like it's my late 20s. It took me that long to find that. And then after that, I basically did some traveling and then started to teach yoga, as you do. But started to travel a lot more and then go study in India as well. And that's where I met some really phenomenal movers of prana. Like that's when I understood, like, okay, there's prana and then there's like really understanding its intelligence. And I mean that in a sense of like going to an ashram and seeing a yogi at the front of the room be able to awaken the life force in the entire room just from sitting there. Just from sitting there and glancing at the students and seeing everybody start to like where all the prana is stuck in their body, they literally start to do all these movements because it's part of the tradition. Is basically like when we have stuck prana in the body, if the body can move it to release the blockages, then we can finally sit in deep meditation because that agitation isn't there. The energy's flowing, right? So this yogi could literally look at people and get this to happen. And when that happened within me, just from someone staring at me, like with a glance, I was like, okay, that's also something that I'm really curious about. Um, and so I just wanted to continue to learn. And then eventually my journey after studying in India for a couple of years took me to Peru because I had been drinking medicine all along since for like I don't know, 2008. I think I started doing that in Canada. And then I decided, okay, I'm going to go full into medicine in Peru. And I went for a dieta, came back a year later, and then basically started working at a center there and started apprenticing. And then eventually I left the center and just met my partner and we started going to the jungle and living in the village and apprenticing. We did that for quite a while till we felt our teacher was like, okay, it's time for you guys to go out and start doing your own thing. So we ran a center in Peru in the Sacred Valley for like 5 years. And now
Wow.
we've just taken a break and we're took a year to travel around the world and just rest and integrate. Because I think that's one of the most important things in this work is like there has to be those pauses where you take all the information that's been uncovered for you and actually um, learn how to embody it when all that stuff's taken away, all the medicine and everything else, all the highs and the lows, like just your day-to-day chop wood, carry water. How are you integrating all those lessons and are you living them, you know? And I think that's where like our energy centers really start to take it in and embody that. But if you don't have those pauses, it's like it doesn't give it time to land, you know? So
Hmm.
now that we've had that, we've subsequently moved to Mexico and we're in the process of resetting up here now in a different way.
Thank you for sharing.
Mm,
It's a quite an amazing story, quite an amazing, beautiful life.
mm,
Um, and by prana energy, you, as I understand it, it's a life force, right? Because not
mhm,
everyone knows what prana is.
mhm. Yeah.
That's how you can understand it.
Yeah, it's like the animating force. Like if we didn't have prana in the body, we would be lifeless, you know? It's the thing that depending on the amount that we have, it gives us that vitality, that magnetism, that energy to regenerate ourselves. And so when we're young, we have immense amounts of it. That's why children run around and they can't sit still, and there's just so much prana moving in the body and they heal really quickly. But as we age, the energy starts to decline in our body and our chakras start to spin a little bit slower and a little bit slower, harder to heal. So the idea is that if we can find ways to keep that energy regenerating, to keep it moving and flowing in the body, to find, say, for example, the thoughts or the emotions that get in the way of that functioning properly, and move through those, we can ideally live a life with more vitality, right? And ideally heal faster and have better state of mind, the whole thing, be healthy.
Yeah. I was walking yesterday in the wilderness, and this question popped up to my mind to ask you at the beginning, like in general, how to have a beautiful, magical, healthy, happy life based on your experiences and knowledge.
Yeah. I think where I'm at right in this moment is to be able to lead from the heart. And
Hmm.
it's taken me a long time to really understand what that means, because I feel like there's so many ways that we disappear ourselves, where if something in life becomes challenging, we have these ways that we disappear. We can get angry, we can get anxious, we can get judgmental, you know, self-deprecating. And it's a way to protect ourselves in our minds, you know. And I think as soon as we disappear, it's like we're not there. And then it's very difficult to engage with life when we're not even home,
Hmm.
you know? So I think if whatever comes up, if we're able to meet it in a place where one of my teachers calls it the big fish eats the little fish, where, for example, if there's anxiousness present, right, because something's happened in our lives, like we have to pay a bill or we didn't expect or something comes in, and there's that fire of anxiety, you know,
Hmm.
um, can I sit and bring that anxiety feeling into my heart and just give it presence and let the heart field energy be stronger than that energy of anxiety? And it's so amazing. Like when you just sit
Wow.
and give it that time, you watch the anxiety just minimize, minimize, minimize. And I'm not trying to get rid of it. I'm not trying to move through life pushing things away. It's more about embracing everything that's coming and bringing it into the heart space, right? And the more and more that I do that, um, everything that comes at me doesn't have to be something to pushed away or avoided or leaning back from, you know, I'm able to stay in my center, um, and take that in and learn from it, right? So that to me has been the biggest lesson so far is just like how much can I live in the heart field and welcome everything.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful way to describe it. So
Mm.
this energy of the heart is basically larger than and stronger than everything else we
Yeah, the big fish, because
face.
imagine, yeah, if my heart
Hmm.
energy is very small and there's a big anxiety that comes in and I don't have the energy to meet it, like who's going to win, right? The big anxiety. And, you know, it's like if there's nobody home, I almost feel like the anxiety can come inside and say, "Oh, hey, everybody, there's nobody here," and call his friends to come in too. You know, if there's nobody home to meet it, it's like, well, this is a place where anxiety live, and I'm going to call all the other thought forms of anxiety that I resonate with. One of my teachers, he shared, it's like 70% of the thought forms of the ideas in our field aren't even our own. you know?
Yeah,
And
I
so
agree
it's
with that.
like, yeah,
Mhm.
so that's an incredible thing to think. Like, if anxiety comes and I just allow it to fester and then call all of its friends in because I take off, like, what's going to be the result, you know?
Mhm.
So it takes that discipline to be able to sit with whatever's arising and say, okay, like anxiety is here, but I'm not going to go away or I'm not going to go into anger, you know? And it's a practice, like it's something we get better at over time, you know? But we need to practice.
Okay, so instead of empowering this fear or anxiety, we
hmm
gotta be conscious and present.
hmm
Maybe take a couple deep breaths and
Well,
make
let's
this make this habit to try to overcome it at the very beginning when it's starting, right? When it's at its
exactly.
seas.
And I
Hmm.
think like singing in ceremony to people was something where I really had to get good at that, you know, because like if you're singing Icaros to people and there is waves, huge waves of fear coming off somebody, right? Or a huge wave of anger coming so whatever the wave is that people carry in their bodies, right? It comes at us while we're singing. And so, for example, if like I'm holding space for 15 people and I get submerged in a wave of fear, if I let it in. Like if I open the door from the inside and say, come on in, you know, instead of
Hmm.
like closing the door from the inside, wow, fear is here and I'm okay. Everything's fine. I'm just going to like sit here in my light and keep meeting it, you know, in love. And as long as I don't open the door in the beginning and let it in, and I'll admit, I wasn't very good at this in the beginning. You know, when I first started drinking medicine, I was terrified. Every time there'd be some kind of wave of fear come, and you know, I could sense the energies. I would take it on as my own, and get really scared and ask for help and all these sorts of things, you know, and take it on. Um, and that went on for years until it was like I finally something clicked. Like I have to make the decision when fear comes is like I orient. Am I fine? Yeah, I'm fine. Okay, well, I'm just gonna keep sitting here until this fear moves like a
Hmm.
rock, you know?
Yeah, I've noticed that the mechanism which you describe during the heroic sessions with sacred plants, that's what
Mm-hmm.
they do. We came to this Y in the road, and we can go into this dark fear road and have a bad trip, or we can face it
Mm-hmm.
and go into transcending whatever we need to transcend or learn, right?
Yeah, and it's not like we're avoiding it. Like I'm not
Hmm.
advocating for that, but it's just like if fear is sitting in front of me, it's like at first I you know, a lot of people say get curious about it and look at it, and sometimes that can be difficult when it's like very dramatic images and these sort of things of your past or of like you know, teeth or jaws or whatever you see, bugs, all the things you see in ceremony, you know what I mean? It can be very confronting, you know? But it's really curious if you just sit and like access that heart energy and just, okay, I'm going to sit here and open the heart and just pour, it's almost like pouring it into the separation. It's kind of the
Hmm.
visualization I have. It's like I'm pouring that into that separation or whatever that is. Um, and just seeing it start to dissolve in a sense and it loses its like imagine an example where when I first started drinking, there was this dog that would come and he had these big snarly teeth and venom were coming off the teeth and he would bark in my face, you know, and I'd turn away and I didn't want to look. And I think after like the 10th ceremony with the same image, I'm like, okay, like, why are you here? What are you about? Like, and then it just disappeared.
Okay,
And that's just
that's super
exactly what's
interesting.
happening every time, right? It's like I think about that barking dog. It's like we have to open our eyes and look, you know, and trust that we're okay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Hmm.
Safa, I'd like to ask you, what was the most courageous thing that you have done in your life so
Hmm.
far?
Good question.
Ever?
I would say going through the apprenticeship in the jungle was definitely very, very trying, very terrifying at points because I was getting pushed to my edge, you know? Because I think the whole point, at least in that process, is like meeting death, meeting death and continuing to keep walking. And so, you know, when my husband and I were out there, there was definitely times when saw him push to his edge of like the mind disintegrating kind of thing. Or for me, I had a tetany that went on for 6 hours. I don't know if you're familiar with tetany, but basically it's where the nervous system just fires continually. and all your joints, basically your hands curl into one another and your whole body locks, and it gets more painful, more painful, more painful.
Oh, wow.
And I had a night like that, and it was creeping up towards my heart, and I knew, I said, oh wow, if that hits my heart, I'm going to die. And it went on for 6 hours, and I had a whole family of maestros around me singing, um, and nothing was touching it. And I was just like, okay, the only thing that I can do in this moment is connect with God and ask for whatever meant to be here. Is like, I have to surrender completely to it. And it was
Hmm.
only when I could finally make that connection and surrender, like the energy started to move. But um, it was it was it was the closest to death I've ever been. Um, and it scared me for a while, after that, like, do I want to continue on this path? Is this something that is for me? But I think, like, having the courage to keep walking and keep meeting that fear, there's really no other choice. I remember I was about to go, we had that ceremony, and I had to go back in again, and I was having a pipe before ceremony, and I was just devastated. I was like, do I really have everything? All the self-doubt, all the things I was talking about were coming to roost. And I remember the pipe, and I heard this voice, and it just said, you got two choices, and I don't really care what you do. It was very indifferent. And it said, you can roll over and give up, or you can get up and keep walking. I don't really care.
Hmm. Yeah.
I don't know where that voice came from, but it was like, yeah, that really is the only option, you know? Um, and so I think, like, that decision to keep going was the best decision I ever made, hardest one, you know?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, they say in at least the Shipibo Konibo tradition, um, that to enter into the circle of Unanya, which is basically, Unanya translates as the one who knows, it's the one who serves the medicine. There's a big test to get into that circle of Unanya. Yeah. Then I saw my husband go through it as well. Like, there's a definite, and I see a lot of people are like, that's not for me, that's too much. I'll come and do some diets, or I'll come and go to ceremony, but like, to go that deep, it can be really terrifying. Are you ready to go through that?
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. That's very
Mm,
deep, very profound.
mm,
I was in a similar situations a couple times in my
mm.
life with some
See it in your
really,
eyes.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I know what you're thinking. I feel you. Um, I asked that question about the most courageous thing because I was listening yesterday to your amazing podcast with, it's called The Universe Within. It was like 4 years
Mm,
ago.
mm-hmm.
Such a beautiful conversation. I highly recommend. We can place a link in the description. And you were describing those amazing dietas you were doing with your husband, Felix, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You were sitting there and just being bitten by mosquitoes, and the only thing you could do was just turn around 180 degrees, and that's it, right?
There was no
And it
escape.
was for weeks, right? Or
Oh, months.
months? Yeah,
Months,
even
yeah.
months.
I mean, there was one time, yeah, we did 3 months under one long mosquito net. So with our nets end to end. So, and there was
Mm.
nobody else out there. It was one other friend with us that was dieting. And yeah, that was it. We would just, like, if you want to do some deep, deep relationship counseling,
Mm.
spend 3 months in the jungle under a net with somebody.
I don't know who in our culture society is ready for that. That's hardcore, you know.
But I
I
honestly feel like being
highly
able to go
admire you guys for doing it.
but we've been together 10 years now, and up until that point before, I felt like there was always things I'd meet within myself in the mirror of relationship, and I'd turn and run. It was just like I wasn't ready, and it was through the dieta process that I had to go that deep with somebody else and be so revealed to somebody else, but also to see
Mm.
that other person, like, be able to go into their own stuff in the way that when there's pain, they're not looking to the external as the one to blame, which is what happens a lot in relationship dynamics. It's like, there's pain inside, it's your fault. I'm going to go somewhere else, right? This is too much. So it's like
Yes.
being able to learn
Mm.
how to deal with your own pain without projecting it outwards. It's a huge process, and we don't really get that kind of opportunity so much in our culture. Like, how can we put our feet in the fire of a relationship like that? So, but they also say too in my tradition that it intertwines you when you diet with somebody, that it gets more challenging to separate. That's the perception anyway.
So what was the deepest, the most profound message from the jungle, or from this process of dating
Mm.
for you guys?
You know, I went through a process, and to be sensitive here, you know, we're going into a different culture. There's a very different way of looking at the world from the Shipibo Konibo way of looking at the world, the way the Western, like, you know, coming from North America, the way I look at the world from Canada. Um, you know, and I feel like I came with a lot of entitlement that I had to face, you know, and humility, wanting things to be a certain way. And that's really challenging, you know, because I have to face that stuff. Like I had to really like go deeply in that mirror of reflection and going with an open heart. And there'll be times when things that happen are very challenging to face, like they spend all the money in the first week and then there's no food to feed you. And just like and then everyone's asking you for money all the time, all the time, all the time, all the time, right? And I understand why. But at the same time, you're also going there to do a dieta process and try to focus, and there's a lot of challenges, right, that you face. Men approaching the women and trying to sleep with them, and all the things that are normal there, right? um, but I think one of the biggest challenges was, and rightfully so, seeing that there'll be times when, because I'm a woman, I'm not going to get taught certain things, and I could hear it in the conversations and the way they would talk to my husband, like, and then also too, just being from a different culture, that there also be places that we're not going to go in terms of teaching, right? Like this is for the family and the lineage, and that's okay, right? Like I understand why, but I remember it beating up against it and being like, am I going to learn here? Is there going to be something that opens, you know? Um, and one of the biggest messages after like a deep, deep diet, it was like, you know, ultimately this is between you and me, you know? And so everything that you need to know is going to come, and stop trying to look outside for someone else to give it to you. You know, this is between you and me, and you have to do the work. And then after that, I could really set down having to need it, you know, from somebody else versus like, okay, like what do I have to do inside? How would I have to perceive what needs to be done here for this lesson to come? And it brought a lot of peace once that realization was finally made, you know?
Yeah, it's constant work, right? It's life is a one huge school.
Hmm.
Um, uh, I would like to keep things simple and very pragmatic. You know, when we record those conversations beyond the courage. So you mentioned that when we are kids, we got so much energy that prana energy, the life force is just flowing through us. And then what's happening then? What's causing those blockages within our body, and why we lose that energy, and what average person can do simply on daily basis to start this process of how we can call it
Hmm.
reconnecting with this prana energy. How would you call it?
Regenerating? Yeah.
Regenerating? Yeah.
Yeah. Um, well, like I mentioned earlier, it's like if we go back to the ways that we disappear, so again, I go into anger, I go into anxiety, I go into whatever it is, jealousy. And a lot of times we learn that from our parents. It's like our parents and our lineages created different ways for us to stay safe and stay small so that we can survive, you know? So in a sense, I feel the power in that and the gratitude in my family line for having the tools to be able to continue and move us forward, you know? So there's a welcoming of the anxiety, there's a welcoming of the anger. But at the same time, if anxiety continues to sit in my energy field, so for example, let's look at the root center. So the earth center, the energy center that's connected with supporting our body, our muscles, our bones, our level of prosperity, our sense of feeling like the universe will provide for us, you know? And a lot of times, um, this really comes forth with like how our childhood experience is. But if, for example, there's a feeling of scarcity in the family home all the time, and there's a lot of anxiety around that, that energy tends to sit like a weight in that energy center, right? So over time, as the energy is trying to come into the body, it's like it's almost hitting rocks. So it's trying to go through you, but there's all this stuff in the way from letting that energy flow in freely, right? So I've got anxiety here and stress here and this sort of thing, right? So if I allow that to sit there and I keep letting it grow, it literally like it gets big over time. You know, the thought forms get weighty. And this really drains our energy. It's like it stops because the chakras have a function, they spin, right, back and forth. And part of their function is to receive energy from the universe, and then the other part is to expel energy. So they change their spin, you know, constantly. They're taking in, taking out, like breathing, right? So if that function, because of all the debris in the way, is compromised, it starts to deplete or congests or doesn't feed the body in the right way. So if that were to happen, say an example in our stomach area where, you know, a lot of like self-worth stuff comes up, we could start to have issues with the liver or have issues with the pancreas or whatever goes on here, the organs in this area, right? It's very related to the body. So, you know, the work as I see it, where I'm at now is like there's different approaches. You know, some people approach it going in as if I'm going to go in and extract this thing and throw it away, right? And that's one
Mm.
like valid way people practice energy medicine. They go in, they pull it, they take it out. So it's like I'm trying to get rid of something, you know? And then the other approach that I see is more of like a spiritual healing approach. So energy medicine versus spiritual healing, where it could be like something I was talking about earlier, where instead of trying to throw something away, I'm meeting whatever is here with source energy, right? With that bigger fish of love. Um, and a lot of times when I'm working energetically with people and I just sit and I'll just sit and I'll let their body speak to me. So you know, they tell me that they have issues going on with their throat. So I'll just sit in a chair and I'll literally take my energy and go to the area of their throat and I sit and I listen. Okay, what is here? And sometimes I'll feel waves of anxiety, just like singing Icaros, waves of stress, bad words someone says towards themselves, like something will present itself. And so the approach, I could either try to sweep it out and get rid of it, or what I find is very effective is just sitting there and meeting it and let it speak to me. And then I keep being present and then it gets louder. And then I can feel pressure on my body and I just keep holding that heart space and meeting it. And a lot of times after doing that and giving it space, giving it love, giving it attention, the energy just clears. And that doesn't need to be there to speak in such a loud way. And then a lot of times, like if we look at, say, the energy center of the throat, it has a shape, like a cone or like a flower, like a circle. And if we're in a good place, the diameter is nice and big. You know, as we hold more prana, this diameter gets larger and larger. This is part of the spiritual work, is to increase the diameter of our energy centers so we're literally holding more energy to transmit as a being of service on earth. Yeah. So a lot of spiritual practices are figuring out how to make these nice and big. So part of that work is cleaning out the debris, and then the other part is like doing things to bring the energy in, right? Um, and so if when I do that with somebody and just sit and meet it, a lot of the times I find after I'm finished, the energy center, if it was kind of closed, um, collapsed a little bit, just with that meeting, it will open and be strong again because that energy is not sitting there hovering
Yeah,
around
that's
anymore.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Mm.
And it's very similar with they call them thought forms of say smoking. You know, someone can have a ton of smoking thought forms in their throat, right? And it's like voices in their head. Have a cigarette, have a cigarette, have a drink, like whatever, you know, the thing is. And if you can work on just like meeting that and bringing that love, a lot of time that moves out of the way and then the voices are gone. It's more silent. It's easier to not have a cigarette, you know? Yeah. So just to make that distinguishing, I guess, division, that there are different ways to approach it. And I'm open to both because sometimes I do see there can be time when a bit of physical manipulation, such as disintegrating like some calcified energy in the root of the throat with my hands, can move things a little bit different. So I kind of move in between the physical manipulation and then also too like meeting it with the heart space energy. And I find that's way more effective. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Thank you. Thank
Hmm.
you. So basically, the courage within us to just meet, face this energy,
Hmm.
whatever our body is trying to communicate us, is
Yeah,
can
and we
can.
can use the feeling in our body
Mm.
as a point of focus. You know, if I'm
Mm.
feeling like my throat is super tight because I'm really scared, if I just sit, you know, close my eyes and it's like, okay, I'm gonna first connect to my heart. So, you know, you can just go to like the right of the sternum and just connect and okay, I'm like connecting to source field energy. And a beautiful way I've heard it described, it's like the energy beyond time and space where all miracles are possible. You know, you're not
Wow,
limited by
that's
time and
beautiful.
space. So I've heard many different teachers talk about it in different ways. Like I had a healing from a guy that did Tao source energy, Master Zigong Sha. He was his big thing. He would like hit you over the head with divine source energy, you know, but he would heal people from sitting in a wheelchair. Like he could tap into that
Mm.
field. So whether you call it Tao source energy, universal consciousness, heart field, whatever it is, it's that place where miracles are possible, you know? So one of my teachers, he always says like, you have a parent cancer, you have a parent disease, you know, so that you leave that space open for the miracle to come, you know, and let it be part of your consciousness. So when I tap into that space and just open to that possibility and sit in that energy, let it build, and then go towards this place where I'm feeling that contraction. Okay, can I meet that separation, that contraction with my heart? And so many times, if I just give it the attention, and it might be 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, right? It
Yeah,
has a chance to speak rather than like just going into anger, right? Which is what most of us do, right? It's hard to have that patience to sit down and do it. But if you can, even once a day for 20 minutes, like make that a conscious practice. Okay, where I'm going to sit with whatever's arising right now. And after you do that, it's incredible how much energy moves.
yeah, that's a very good idea. It could be a very, very
Mm-hmm.
good habit, and it's amazing
Mm-hmm.
that it could be that simple. It's just meeting the energy, spending
Yeah,
time
like
with.
understanding you have that within you. And I
Mhm.
think that's been a big shift for me over the years is like, you know, I love prayer and I love the idea of connecting to divine source because if on an energy body level, it's said that our crown center opens, right? So as my teachers have shared with me, like when the crown center is collapsed, it's very difficult to feel like life has a sense of purpose, a sense of meaning. We don't get a call to be of service to humanity, but it says like when this opens, that's when we get that call to service. Like there's just no other option, you know, when this gets
Mhm.
strong. And so when we pray, um, this energy center opens, right? So I love the idea of praying, but at the same time, it's not having to be something that's external to me, that it's also here inside my own heart, you know? So even if the prayer is thank you for helping me to open to this divine source energy, that's the direct connection. Whereas like some people in tradition, they do that through praying to um, you know, Jesus or to a Buddha or whatever it is, right? And all are valid. But is that the place that we're tapping in from ultimately? And I think that like when I made that connection, like that it's just right here. Um, and it's beyond time and space. Like the energy work that I was doing just dramatically shifted in terms of potency.
Well, isn't it
Yeah.
amazing that our superpower could be self-healing?
Yeah. And that is the other superpower. I think is yeah, having like that urgency to do the work for ourselves, you know? More and more and more, it's like I I want to work with people who are willing and have that sense of urgency to do the work, you know, because we can have somebody come and okay, I want you to do an energy session for me, and then they feel great for a while, but then they just go straight back into the behaviors of like, oh, anxiety's here and why am I not healed, you know, without doing any of their own work themselves, right? Like, are they
Mhm.
sitting down for half an hour and trying with their heart to meet what's happening, you know? It's like we have to do that. There has to be that urgency, right?
Yeah, I totally agree.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we have mentioned at the beginning that you were brave enough to quit your 9 to 5 work. What
Mm-hmm.
would be your message, your advice to people who are listen to us, watch us right now, be
Mm-hmm.
watching us, and how someone can start this process within
Like
what
in the
should be the first
context
step?
of, yeah,
Hmm.
doing their job. Yeah.
Hmm.
um, I think in the same way that I mentioned, you know, it's like especially if you feel like you're in a job that you're not so comfortable in or feeling it's not serving the soul,
I
you
think
know,
90% of people are
yeah.
are in those jobs, right?
You know, and all I can speak from is my own experiences. I felt like I was becoming ill, you know, trying to make a lot of excuses, why I should stay because I need the mortgage payment, this and that, you know. And I know people have children, and there's a lot of things like some reasons that you can't just pick up and go, you know.
Hmm.
Um, but I do feel like if you make that deep, heartfelt prayer to bring the right experiences to me and bring the right people to me, help to open doors for me. Uh, and that comes from, again, the heart. Something happens, but there has to be that willingness to connect. Like, we could have an affirmation, like, I bring love to everyone I meet, or I don't know, something, or everyone I meet in the office, I'm going to treat with kindness, like, super. You're trying to change your behavior, Um, and that's great. And sometimes it could be very difficult, right? Like, you're trying to change your life from the level of where things are existing, like it's if I don't know if you understand what I mean, but like,
Yeah, I do.
yeah, I'm trying to
Mhm.
change how this person in my office makes me angry, but I'm already angry. Like, it's where do I get the power to meet this, Um, and one of the things one of my teachers taught me is like connecting those deep heartfelt prayers with either, however you want to call it, God, source fields energy, that power, like I said, beyond time and space, that brings in that sense of miracle, or that miracle. Um, and making that heartfelt connection. He my teacher, like, describes it as like creating the thought form of something happening because it's connected to source energy. And I could say, like, if I was trying to heal my eyes, you know, through divine source energy, and I'm creating this thought form here. Um, I'm receiving, or through divine source energy, my eyes are healing every day, or I have 20/20 vision. Through divine source energy, the solution to this issue at work is going to open, or is going to resolve itself, or the new job that I'm looking for is going to come, like really creating it here and then bringing it down into the body, like really feeling it, and that time I mentioned when you're just sitting with yourself and meeting things, after that, if you can create these positive thought forms and bring them down to the body, like they anchor, they start to do it. But it's not just an affirmation of I'm going to do A and get B. It's like I'm connecting to God, that light, and then bringing it down as the driver, right? This
Yeah,
is
I
the
got
thing
it.
that's going
Yeah.
to change things. It's not like I just pray and God's going to change everything, but it's like I'm asking for that door to open, but then I have to be willing to have the courage to take the chances when they come, right? So it's a 50-50 game here, right? Like,
Ok-
when I know something is absolutely wrong for me, do I have the courage to stand up for myself and say, okay, like, no matter what happens in the situation, this is crossing a line from my boundaries and I may lose my job here, right? But how willing are we to listen to what feels absolutely true? And I find when we're in that stillness, and in that listening, that becomes very clear as to, like, what is a green light and what's a red light in your life.
Yeah, but losing the job could be the best thing that ever happened to us
Exactly,
because you may
exactly.
start a
Just
new
happened to a
beautiful
client of
journey,
mine
right?
actually last week. He wrote me, and because we've been working together, he said I met the firing with the most grace. He said I can't even imagine.
Wow. I love that.
Yeah.
Um, Also, would you be so kind and elaborate on your journey, your history with ayahuasca, because it's also very interesting. I remember you were reading a book on the train, right? That's where it started.
Yeah, I was traveling through Germany and I brought
Mm.
Sting's book with me. I think it was 2004. And I didn't even know how to say the name at the time, but I started reading his book, and the opening chapter is him describing his journey drinking ayahuasca. And I remember just feeling like all lit up in my body, and I'm like, whatever that is, I need to know what it is. Because at the time, like I said, I was working a corporate job, you know,
Yeah.
um, and really suffering that exact same position that we just talked about. Um, Getting up every day and literally crying myself as I was driving to my job, crying on the way home, crying on the way to work, crying on the way home. Like, I've lived it, I understand.
Mm.
you know? Um, but then I think the year after that I came back to Canada, and I did that thing I just talked about. I literally lied on the ground. I think I was sitting in my apartment, and I lied on the ground, and I, you know, connected my heart to the earth, and I just said, okay, I am ready to find ayahuasca. Back in 2005 in Canada, very difficult to find ceremonies. And I just said, so connected to the earth and I said, ayahuasca, if you can find me, I'm ready. And within a week, I got an email asking with an invitation to go to ceremony off one of the islands off
Yeah.
Vancouver Island.
Isn't that
And
amazing?
it happened like that. So like when I say, the thing I was talking before about making that heartfelt prayer, like I'm not just, saying lies, like this is a true thing. It keeps happening. That deep heartfelt prayer. And so right away I was hooked from the very first ceremony. I was taken to some of the most intense places. As you know, like everybody's drank plant medicine, it's like, how is this so personal? How is this teacher like knowing everything about my history in the very first night? And so I'm like, whatever that is, just like with my other teacher, I'm going to continue to follow this. And so at the time we ended up hosting like ceremonies in Canada for a time, my partner and I. And then I ended up going to India and doing a lot of things, but ayahuasca was always there in my heart. And that's when I ended up going back to Peru to do a dieta because I felt ready to go deeper with the plants after doing so many, regular ceremonies. And then when I went back to work at the center, it wasn't really on my radar to dive that deeply. I was planning to go back and continue to teach in Asia, and then my partner, he looked at me, he's like, "Do you want to just stay and just give everything to this and go into the jungle?" And I didn't even hesitate. I was like, "Yes."
Wow.
So I had to call everybody and cancel all my things, and it was a lot. Like I feel like I let a lot of people down. But at the same time, it's like, are you connected to what your yes is, what your truth is? And for me, that was an absolute truth. So we ended up um finishing up our work there, and it was amazing working at the center because we got so much exposure to so many different healers, because there were so many different families coming through there and all the different ideas and all the different ways that they perceive you work with ayahuasca and what's happening and this sort of thing. So it was a great education. And then also to the staff, the facilitators that had also been training and listening to all the different ideas. So it was like a whole hub of ideas coming into my brain about what plant medicine was, 100 miles an hour while drinking tons and tons of psychedelics at the time, right? So it was a very, very transformative time for me. um, so then we left there and then went to the jungle and then kept coming back every year to spend lots of time apprenticing in the jungle, like working directly with our teacher, and like that time, like living under the nets, in the jungle, mosquitoes drinking from the lagoon, like just it was tough. you know you have to have a certain kind of hardiness to be able to do that, and living with tons of poisonous snakes and always having to be on guard, and then you're on psychedelics but you still have to be on guard because there could be like a coral snake in the toilet, like
Yeah.
it's
It's a
jungle
completely
life,
different
right?
world,
It's
right?
completely different, and that's not for everybody. But it also, like I said, like brought a lot of humility that I needed, and strength to be able to face like some very, very challenging situations and keep going. Um, and the way my teacher taught, it was never one of sharing what he saw in your body. It was like, that's your process, and that's all you ever got. There'd be technical things shared about like how to run a dieta and how to open the dieta and all these sorts of things, like the technical things. But yeah, there was never a teaching of like, this is what I see in you kind of thing, which the Western mind like loves to hear. So that was also good for me to be able to just like look inside and get the sorry, let's rephrase that, set the narrative down and just experience. Yeah.
Yeah, I love you
Um,
laughing.
yeah. And then so after that, working quite a few years, my teacher, he was watching us work and he says, "Ah, okay, like go." And so we went to the Sacred Valley and ended up just starting small, which I think is a really good way to work. My partner, he was, I don't know how to say, like a few years ahead of me in terms of like singing and understanding the language. And he started singing in the ceremony, and I would be like the backup singer, like singing to the room and doing all the sorts of things and singing to watch him, and just getting my own confidence and dealing with the energies coming into the space and learning how to keep centered. You need the time to be able to do that, because it's one thing going in ceremony and feeling everything, but then once you start taking the role of holding the space and singing to people, like it's a very big transition, very, very big. Um, Especially as all the energies are coming at you and you have to go through the process of your mind starting to deconstruct all the illusions and imaginations that it creates. And when I said about all the ideas that came at me initially in the training, um, everything that I was perceiving was through the lens of everything that I've been taught through the tradition, right? Which has its great points. And then I think at some points too, there was like, yeah, it was like just setting it down and just setting it down. And what I noticed over time over the years of singing to people is like initially I noticed like a lot of images and a lot of scorpions and a lot of snakes and a lot of clowns and a lot of whatever, right? Like a lot of stuff. And as my own mind started to clear over the years, it was like the singing became way less filtered with all these images and then projections of what the images were, right? It was just
That's very
like,
interesting.
here's the light, here's the design, that's it. Here's the love. And it just became very much clearer, you know? Um, and that's also a process too. So it's like a lot of people want to hear, what did you see? What is it? What, what is this? It's like a lot of the times it's like that's just a lot of our mind creating illusion. And as it starts to silence, um, there's just the purity of it, you know?
Would you say that the biggest driver of those images, symbols, is our fear? Not
Um,
being because that space, that ayahuasca DMT space, is when we live in the Western world, it's a very new for us. It's a completely different
Absolutely.
realm,
Absolutely.
and
Um,
and we can learn how to navigate through those words. Uh,
mhm,
and I think that's my opinion that the one of the biggest drivers is a fear within us,
mhm.
fear facing. And
Yeah,
then
we're not taught what to
ayahuasca want to
do.
give us a way deeper message, but it shows us those pictures as some kind of like a symbols or synonyms, right?
Mm-hmm. And sometimes, yeah, it can look like a whole vision of your childhood, and then sometimes it just looks like a barking dog, like, and
Yeah.
sometimes it gets very difficult to make any sense of, well, why is this snake attacking me, or why is it all whatever, black scorpions. Um,
It could be because our mind is trying to learn how to navigate through that space
mhm. It's trying to understand what's
and
going on,
understand,
and
yeah, the messages, yeah, those deep messages, right?
well, one of the ways one of my teachers described it, he said, and I've always thought about this, is like the mental body. So we have, our physical body, we've got a body of emotions where all our emotions are stored, and then we've got the body of mind. Um, and he made this description like when we see visions, imagine it like we're seeing what the debris in the mental field is, what is existing in our mental field. So remember I said earlier, we've got 70% of the thought forms that are existing in our field that aren't even ours. We live in a sea of thought forms, right? So when we go into ceremony, our vision starts to open and we get to perceive what's in that field of thought form, right? And so we're in a group of people. We've got, the person across the room's thought form coming in, and then we're like, we perceive it as, oh, like this thing is attacking me. That person's doing the thing and it's attacking me, and really it's
Mm.
just like the thought form coming off that person. And, what creates like that's when we have the choice, right? Is the non-reactivity. It's like, yes, here's that fear and thought form coming in, or maybe someone's had a thought about me in ceremony, right? But like, what am I doing in that moment when it comes into my perception and it looks like a scorpion, right? Am I going to go into complete reactivity and fear, and then I'm eaten by the scorpion or whatever, like I'm drowning in a pool of scorpions or a black hole or death or whatever it is, Or as it comes in, I'm like, oh, wow, like there's this thought form of whatever it is here. And it just, even that understanding helps to diffuse some of the reactivity to it. At least for me, it's like, okay, like this is all the things that are sitting in the field of thought. And when your mind is very busy, you've had a lot of trauma, you've been exposed to a lot of stuff, it's extremely busy. There is so many things in there going on, and it's like a deluge. There's just too much, but as I was mentioning, as the mind starts to clear, it gets less and less and less, so if when you initially start to drink medicine, instead of going into fear and reactivity, or something's coming at me or something's trying to hurt me or whatever, it's like, this is just what's in the field. Like, okay, how am I going to react? Don't open the door to fear. I've had so many different teachers, my medicine teacher, my mountain teacher in Peru. Like, don't get afraid. Don't open the door to fear. As
Yep.
soon as you open that door, you've lost.
Yeah, exactly. I
You
totally agree
know,
with
this
that.
is the training. It's dominating your mind. Not like you're not acknowledging the thing is there, but how am I reacting?
Mhm.
You know?
And now we can say that you are ayahuasca maestra, right? And you
Yes, yes.
you learn how to hold the space, how to manage that energy. I know a really amazing maestra here in States in Chicago. There's a big chance we'll be recording podcasts as well.
Mm,
And I've talked with her privately about like the mechanics behind it.
mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
it's quite a challenge. It's also quite a responsibility, right? And people
Absolutely.
come from Western world, and they don't. It's a completely new universe for them, and those energies are mixing, and some really challenging situations may happen there, right?
Yeah. People feel, yeah,
Mhm.
they don't have agency. Like, sorry, you finish and then.
No, I'll just ask you if you still enjoy it right now, and when you progress that far to learn how to dance with the those spirits of ayahuasca.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah. Um,
Is it still a huge challenge for you every ceremony, or it became way easier and manageable for now?
yeah, it gets better over the years, you know? Not saying that there still isn't the physical effort of going in and singing 15 Icaros in a row to people, you know, and having to hold your mind very clear like that, like physically, it takes a lot of energy out of you. You know what I mean? Because not only are you the physical act of singing, but also there's all the mental energy of perceiving not only the person you're singing to, but monitoring the energy in the room, monitoring what my husband is singing, what Icaros are coming out of him so that I know what he's doing and I know what's going on. So like there's a lot happening that you have to manage, right? If you're holding the ceremony well, like you're trying to perceive everything that's going on in the room, right? Energetically. And manage it, right? So not only am I singing to this person, I might have to at the same time pepper into my Icaro something to move energy in the room, right? There could be like a big fear that's come out of somebody over in the corner, and then I can see it's affecting the three people on either side. Okay, if I just leave that there, that's going to fester, you know? So I've got to take care of that as well. So I think like leaving enough space in your body to be able to acknowledge that and rest in between, you know? Um, but I think the big thing is as the mind clears, like I say, you're spending less time making fear. I don't know how to describe it. Like there's less as you go over time, like there's just less and less times where you dive into fear. You know, you get challenged. Like I said, sometimes a big wave of fear will come and everything will go black and it'll make you forget every word and you'll forget the plants that you're even singing. Like there's just nothing but black and terror and you're in a ball of it, right? And you've got 15 people in the room all looking at you to hold the energy. You know? That's a big responsibility to be able to trust in your connection to God enough to meet that, you know? And so I think we get tested over and over and over again, but the big test like is if I don't open the door, I open my eyes, I orient, um, then I use less energy. And so as I've gone over time, I'm doing that less and less and less where I'm using a lot of energy, you know, and in the beginning I was afraid a lot. You know, what if somebody freaks out? What if something, you know, like all
Yeah.
the what ifs that we can do. And that's also a ton of energy. And you do that less and less as you go on as well because your confidence builds. It's like, no, like we've done this for so long now and managed the space for so long, like we know what to do, you know? And I think that's the thing. Like, if you really trust in your team, I think that's the other thing too, is like, I really trust 100% in the work that my husband does. I don't know if you saw his podcast. He's Felix. He did a podcast with Jason as well. Really awesome.
Yeah, you can place a
Yeah.
link in the description as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That I'm just using less energy going on. So the retreats that we did this year in Costa Rica, like we had more people. But I just felt a lot better afterwards. So I do still love it. But I also think like you need to honor that you need to rest in between, you know?
I'm pretty sure that these secret plants they trying to push us deeper and show our more advanced information and messages, but we need to be ready, right? That's
Uh-huh.
why we can call it like those energy tests with the fear,
Uh-huh.
and then we can progress and receive more advanced knowledge to work on develop our spirits. Do,
Absolutely.
do you recall any like a very funny situation referring to mm, ayahuasca ceremonies or like in your journey in general?
Um, like, I mean, there, it's funny now when I look back, but I just think of like just some of the crazy ceremonies that I've been through, and some of the nights with working with the guests, when I was doing a lot of facilitating before I was doing the actual like singing to myself, which I also think is important to have lots of experience, just being a guide for people, to be with them as they're meeting their thought forms and all the fears that are there, you know what I mean? Like coaching them through meeting these big visions, and big waves of emotion, you know? Um, and sometimes people do funny things when they do that. Like it's not all bad. That's the other thing too, like, I think that was the other shift is like what also made the experience more enjoyable is like expecting that you could laugh and have fun, right? And so when my husband and I are running ceremony, it's like we have a lot of jokes in between and try to laugh and bring the levity into the room and lightness, right? So people aren't, constantly like it has to be so grinding and it has to be terrible and really hard, like it doesn't have to be that.
Yes.
And I find that when that happens, like, I've seen people get up and dance on their mat, and it's fine as long as they're not super distracting. But like, if someone needs to express that, like let it go, and I kind of celebrate that stuff. It's like, wow, you're meeting something joyful inside of you. Like that's so beautiful. Like that's why we're here, is to connect to that.
Mhm.
So to me, like, is it funny? I guess if that's what you mean. Yeah, just funny in the sense of like being able to see people's expression of joy. It just brings that to me too.
Yeah, on this podcast, the universe within you, you mentioned a really funny story that someone understood that the Shiba was asking to pay for his dental
Oh
work,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, if you understand the language,
Mhm.
uh, like hearing somebody say like the person was basically not singing to heal them, but basically singing to convince their brain to pay for their dental surgery.
Mhm.
So that's the kind of thing I'm talking about when you've got two cultures meeting. When I first went down to the jungle, I thought, oh, the healers are all so wonderful and they're only here for the highest good, and like, no, like they've got real world concerns and they need someone to pay for their dentistry. Right, and here's someone who's has apparent money, um and that sort of stuff happens all the time, right? So it's just going there understanding that this is part of the game, and having good boundaries, like this is the amount that I can contribute, this is what I can give back, and being firm with that. It's like I'm not going to go there and just take. I want to go and give, absolutely. But it's like you have to develop the discernment, I guess is the big thing. And what I mean by that, this is where the energy medicine really came in good for me. And this is like, I love to share this with people, is like you can kind of see energetically where people are plugging into you in a sense, right? So, and you can also see too, like where someone is at energetically. So, say for example, here's a funny story. I was facilitating for a company once, and they brought in a maestra, and she was good. Like she did really good work, and nothing bad to say about it. But she comes in and she's like, "Oh, my boyfriend's here. My boyfriend's he's a master at opening visions." I'm like, "Okay." And he's going to come to ceremony tonight. And I couldn't get a hold of the owners of the company, and I'm like, well, what do I do? I was pretty like newer at the time. And so she brings this guy in, and the guests are all like, wow, he's an opener of visions, can't wait. And he sits down and he drinks, and before he even has Mariacion, he starts singing, which is fine. Like a lot of people don't need the medicine to open, but I didn't feel any Mariacion. Like I didn't feel anything opening in him. And then he just starts singing Negro, but he's got the mighty on, he's got the whole outfit on, he's looking the part. But as he starts singing, like I'm noticing like the energy in the room is starting to get blacker and blacker and
Mm.
blacker and blacker. And I'm just like, what? Like, this is not opening visions. Like, this is actually the guy. I didn't feel any medicine coming through. Like, what we say in the Shipibo Konibo tradition is like you have sama niwe, you have the wind of your diets that you all the diets that you've done that come through your voice when you sing. So yes, I can learn all the songs and sing them, but if I haven't done all the diets behind it to give it the potency, nothing's really going to happen. So like someone can learn all the songs and sing them, but if there's no niwe coming through, and I felt no niwe. um, and so this
More
is the
like closing
discernment
visions
piece.
than opening, right?
Exactly. And when we got out of that ceremony, all the guests were like in the dining hall afterwards going like, I didn't have any visions. My visions were shut. I was doing really well and now I don't feel good, you know? And as the facilitator, I'm like, oh yeah, like I don't want to create a lot of stress for people, but at the same time, like I had to nip that in the bud like very right away.
Mm.
This is not going to happen again. This is all the things facilitators have to deal with. So getting back to the discernment, like with energy medicine, you can literally see if somebody has an open crown, right? Like if they have a lot of sama niwe or a lot of connection to source, like you can literally scan if the crown is open. Like, is there a lot of energy in the crown? Is there a lot of energy in the heart? This is part of energy medicine is you can literally like touch it with your hands and measure, you know? So if you have somebody coming and saying, oh, I'm going to give you a big healing and I'm going to show you all these things and you scan the crown and there's nothing much there and you scan the heart, there's nothing much there. But the sacral chakra, the sexual energy is very big,
Mhm.
you know? I'm like, ooh, like, I don't know if this is the person I want to go to learn about spirituality, right? Like, what's probably going to end up happening is this person's going to try to coerce me into their tombo later on, right? To have
Mhm.
sex. Like, because that happens a lot there too, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's like, that gave me the tools to be able to kind of like sense who I wanted to work with and where they were holding their energy. So I love and I say to a lot of facilitators, like, it's really great to learn that level of seeing and discernment if you're going to go down into places like that or work with any teacher to be able to really say, like, okay, I'm going to sit down and vote for this person. Does this person have a crown? Does this person have a heart? Does this person, you know what I mean? Like, and to be able to see on a different level, what's really there versus like what someone's presented, because they can have a ton of charisma through the sacral, right? Like, but if that other stuff isn't there, it's like, okay, maybe I want to learn Tantra from that person or Neo Tantra, but maybe I don't want to learn about meditation and I don't know, connecting to God.
Safa, can you move your microphone? I think because I think your blouse
Oh,
is touching, and
sorry. Yeah, it
uh,
fell.
it it started making a noise.
Oh, okay.
Uh, so we mentioned nowadays people talk a lot about healing, healing, healing. Uh, when I went to Ecuador 2 years ago, I met a Tai over there in the jungle, and the next day we were about to have a beautiful San Pedro ceremony. But before we did that, we spent the night talking, and I asked him, like in general, about life, what's going on here on this planet, and where is the humanity right now, the consciousness. And he mentioned that uh, one thing which really was very contemplating for me, that we are healing, 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 and when finally we be healed, do you think that it is even possible that we can heal ourselves, or it would be a constant process of it? Like he sounded like he was a little bit tired of this healing, healing himself and helping healing others,
Yeah.
because it's using a lot of energy, right? It's a lot of struggling, a lot of energy, a lot of sacrifice, a lot of everything.
Mm-hmm. Well, I question if that's, the thing that I feel is perpetuated is like there's always something to fix, you know?
Mhm.
I gotta heal, I gotta heal, I gotta get better, I got better, get better. Um, and it's that same principle of like trying to, yeah, to fix rather than am I already perfect in this moment? That everything that's here, can I embrace it? Rather than trying to get rid of it or change it or alter it. Um, and there's just a deeper peace and a deeper patience that comes with that energy, with that approach, I feel. Um, Because if I feel like something's always wrong because I have an anxiety wave come in, right? I'm gonna like beat myself up, like, oh, I'm not there yet. Oh, I'm not there yet, and feel like I gotta go back in the jungle and do another diet. I've got to do another diet kind of thing. Um, and it's like I feel like if that's the approach you're coming at dieta with, like maybe it's time to set it down for a little while. Um, and so I really feel going forward, like if I can embrace, like I said earlier, in the example of the ancestry, like the anxiety got me here, the anger got me here. It gave me life. Um, and then that way when it arises, like it's more about it just taking the time to meet it in patience rather than there being anything wrong. And yeah, does that take time to do? In the beginning, yeah, it's a shift in the way our brain works, like and how we handle things. So yeah, it does take the effort. But I feel like over time, as the brain starts to rewire itself, it becomes less of an effort and just a way of being, you know,
We move away from doing
to
to just
being.
being, to just
Yeah.
being. Mm.
Yeah. It's a process, and I think just having good community around and good teachers, who can be an example. And when you feel like your energy's low, like doing the things you need to regenerate yourself. My one teacher, he makes a big distinction and I like it. He said, you know, stop thinking about you're transforming. He's like, you've probably been transforming your whole life. And like, where are you at? Same old place. So he uses the word regeneration, and I like that. Um, where it's a matter of like I'm just sitting in heart field with myself, and that heart field is regenerating my energy. Um, so like again, there's nothing wrong. I'm just literally tapping into that life force that regenerates my body. So it's just like plugging into the wall for electricity. It's not a bad thing. There's nothing wrong with me, but that's something that I with urgency need to do every day. Yeah.
And why do you think those people in Amazon area, why do they struggle with, um, we can maybe say, money or wealth or
Oh, that's such a big one. Um,
because
that
you
yeah.
mentioned everyone is asking about money over there, right? And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but if we look at the Western world, it's almost the same situation. Just
Totally.
10% people can, or even less, could be know how to manage. I would like to ask you also, what is your relationship with money,
Mm-hmm.
um, and abundance in general?
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, first of all, like there's been an infiltration into the cultures that things are shifting now where like even going into the village and instead of everybody being in the community now a lot of the men are leaving and going to the big city or going to do the mining like there's that through the phones and things like that there's been shown there's a different way you can make money you can have all these things but you've got to go out of the village to create it right so um and to have food and things like this so a lot of people are leaving and this is changing everything and then the children like they're also they want to learn Spanish now. They don't want to learn, the indigenous language and they want to leave. And it's just like the whole culture is changing, right? So now it's like, well, to survive in that external culture, you need money. That's just the way the world's set up, right? Whereas back in the day, like everything that was needed, because that's just the way the world was, was provided for you by nature, right? Like you knew how to fish, you knew how to plant your plantains, you knew how to build a house. Like if you were sick, you went out to the jungle and got the plants that you needed. Like everything was provided. But something's happened in the mind shift where now that has changed, right? Where that's not enough because that's the idea that we constantly get fed in the Western world of scarcity and more and more and more and more, right? So I think that has changed things a lot. Um, and I who am I to judge on whether that's right or wrong? Like I really leave it up to a higher plan and like
Yeah,
this is
we don't want to
obviously
judge
what
anyone
yeah I
here.
don't like I really trust in like the transformation that's happening on earth. This is all what's meant to be. um and I'm just a participant. But in terms of, yeah, our whole world being like that, I do really observe the scarcity that's being pumped into and the fear, right? Like there's not enough and and things are costing more and there's inflation and this constant perpetual like sense of like you're not supported and there's not enough and you have to work harder and all these sorts of things, right? And it's very, very strong right now, especially since COVID, like with all the inflation that happened, like people are working harder and earning less. It's happening everywhere. Um, and what I feel is like there's now an even greater call for us to sit with the scarcity within our own body, with the anxiety that it creates, or the feeling that there's not enough, or the feeling like the Divine Mother has shut the door on me and there's nothing here but separation and fear, right? That's just another place for us to sit and do that work. Where what if that doorway to the Divine Mother is always open and always has been, but we've just forgotten, right? And so that's that same thing of tapping into the heart field and like, what if I can pour that divine loving energy into all the places where I'm perceiving separation, where I'm perceiving lack, where I'm perceiving scarcity, right? And pouring that energy in. And the more that you start to do that work, it's like, if that's the belief that I have, say in my root center, which is also a direct reflection of my environment, like what kind of home do I live in and how much money do I have and these sorts of things, right? If there's all that fear and scarcity and distortion in there, no matter how many, sound baths I go to or whatever, like that's not going to change until I actually start to go into it and sit and deeply sit with the scarcity. Okay, like what is here? What continual patterns keep showing up? How can I pour the heart energy into here? How can I really open the door to the Divine Mother to pour in and show me the abundance, right? But a lot of people like that just seems weird. It's like, well, I don't get that. What do you mean by that? And we just go into fear, separation, anxiety, anger, all the things that we do over and over and over and over again. And nothing's going to change until we start meeting that. And so it's my hope. And this is what, for me, Golden Tsunami, the whole vision was of my business was to bring that divine connection into our being, that divine source energy or whatever it is, to awaken that in more and more people so that we feel that the Divine Mother is there when we need it, that $3,000 I need by next Wednesday is coming. It's coming. It's going to come, but it has to be that absolute faith, right? And keep going back into it and keep inviting it in. Um, and this is a process as well, right? Like connecting and tapping into the idea of starting to pray more and then just seeing what happens in your own life. So I feel like that's why I'm ultimately here, is to try to awaken that in whoever will listen, you know?
Yeah, it's such a beautiful statement. The door to the divine is always open.
Mm-hmm.
You have mentioned in this podcast the universe within. That you said something really touching, beautiful. That you would love to have enough money or more money, for example, to give it to someone who house burned down. Right?
Mm-hmm.
We had
Mm-hmm.
those huge fires recently in L.A. area.
Yeah.
So many people lost their houses. They weren't even insured in many
Mm-hmm.
cases. So yeah, because a lot of people think in Western world that money is bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
That this is money is evil, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Whereas like you need it to be able to support people, right?
Yeah,
So if that opportunity comes where there is a donation needed or there's a support for somebody, like if you can make that tithe, that donation, and have the means to be able to do that, that's really important. You know what I mean? Um, and yeah, tithing in whatever way. My teacher always said, like, if you can donate 10% of whatever it is that you make and make that a discipline, that keeps the river flowing. And I think that's the teaching that a lot of people miss, is like that generosity has to keep flowing, because every time we donate, our root center opens. And as the root center opens, it gets bigger, we bring in more prosperity, and it's a loop.
yeah,
It's not like I'm giving away everything. I'm mindful about what I'm doing, but at the same time, like there has to be that output, right? It's just part of nature.
yeah. That's one of our biggest dreams on making Beyond and many other projects to make a lot of money and share it all.
Hmm. Yeah, whether it's like you want to help the animals or you want to,
Yeah,
have people come on scholarship or these sorts of things, like that has to be part of it. And I know like every time I do that with projects, it's always so much more successful.
yeah. I would like to also mention that we support this amazing foundation, which is called the Gift of Heart. It's located in States in Chicago. For past almost 40 years, mostly group of women saved more than 1,400 kids, literally from death.
Amazing.
They sacrifice their lives to help those kids. So we will place all the links in the description.
Yeah, okay, good.
We are also recording conversations with those kids and their parents because some of them are already an adults right now. Really amazing, amazing stories. Very,
Mm,
very touchy.
mm,
Uh, so, Safa, how do you see the future of consciousness, the future of humanity, and also the relation of humans with psychedelics and all these tools which help us heal and expand our consciousness?
mm. I only see it growing.
Mhm.
Um, my feng shui teacher, she talks about, we've just entered into a 20-year period of enlightenment. It's like every 20 years, according to feng shui, is ruled by a different energy. And right now we've stepped into one ruled by fire and awakening. Um, and I definitely see interest changing. You know what, 20 years ago, no one was talking about energy medicine and everybody thought I was nuts. Now it's like I turn on my internet and there's like another person energy healing, another person energy healing, and Kundalini, whatever. Like it's everywhere. And
Mhm.
to me, that's amazing. Like more and more people asking the questions. More and more people are, especially after COVID, like they're like, I don't want to go back to that job. I actually want to do something and follow my heart, right? Like there's definitely an awakening happening. Um,
Maybe
and
that was the
so
purpose of COVID, right? To
I
awaken
do.
people's heart.
Again, the higher plan, right? Like there's so many terrible things that went on through that, but there was such a great awakening as well for humanity. Um, and so what I perceive is just that growing interest and growing interest in that. Um, that people are going to start to ask more questions. And even like when I look at, when I teach people about how to scan, say, for example, the energy centers, what I've noticed over the last 20 years is the general average size of energy bodies, like the chakras, has grown from 20 years ago. So, for example, on average, humanity is holding more energy in their system than they were 20 years ago. So something is big awakening. And then, for example, if well, let's say your crown chakra gets bigger. Like now I'm going to say, oh, well, now I want to actually start to help people. I want to be of service. How can I do that? Excuse me. And if you look at like celebrity, I notice things are changing. Like as there's that awakening, I'm going to use my celebrity more now to support people rather than just about me making a lot of money. So I think through that awakening that's happening, humanity is going to shift very rapidly because people are just not going to be so self-centered anymore. Maybe more community-centric, maybe more how can I be of service rather than just to myself. And when more people do that on a greater basis, things are going to rapidly change even more.
Yeah, that's a beautiful vision.
Excuse me.
I love that. Um, Safa, do you have some experiences with Iboga by chance? No?
No, no, I've decided to connect and stay with ayahuasca. I've lots of
Okay.
friends that have, for sure. But
Mhm.
yeah, for me, I've decided to, yeah,
Okay. This is your plant, right?
yeah.
This is your guide through
Mm-hmm.
this
Mm-hmm.
universe. Yeah, I'm asking this question because Iboga is calling me very heavy, and
Oh, okay. That's amazing. I definitely
uh,
I would 100% go for it. It's just
yeah,
like I think it has to be a calling, right? Like if you get called, that's something, right?
yeah. Same like I got called by a mushroom a couple years ago. It was very heavy calling. Same thing right now. I already had a couple guests on the podcast who had an experience with Iboga, and because I think we attract what we need in our life.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Uh,
I've had friends that have gone to Gabon and done the initiation. It's just like it's dramatically shifted them,
oh
um,
yeah.
really in profound ways. So I really think it's a very beautiful medicine. Very strong.
Oh yeah, it is. It requires enormous amount of courage and
Hmm. Hmm.
dedication to.
But like I said, there's no other choice. It's just
Yeah,
a matter of like how much courage we have in that moment, right? Whether it's just an ayahuasca ceremony or a boga, it's like how willing into the fire are we wanting to go?
yeah. I got to the point in my life when I don't have a choice. I gotta do this. So. Uh,
Yeah, I understand.
Also, I'd like to ask you about your diet, like your daily diet. I'm very curious what you eat. how do you keep your body healthy? You look amazing. You have a beautiful energy. Your body is
Yeah.
glowing.
Yeah.
You look very
Um,
happy.
you know, it's funny because I lived in a place for a long time where people on Vancouver Island and everyone was very health conscious and like always talking about what you should be eating and why are you doing this? And there was a lot of like I noticed a lot of like food judgment. And then when I left there and I went to different places, like you go to Peru and it's like, wow, I'm lucky to get a meal. You know, I'm lucky that I'm at the grocery store and this is what you get, you know? And again, it's like that entitlement that kind of creeps in, like it has to be organic, super whatever, you know? Plucked from the mountain of rainbows. I don't know. Before I'll put it in my body. And I feel like that creates a ton of stress in the system, you know,
Mhm.
versus like I sit down and like whatever's there, I'm like super grateful for it. And wow, that's amazing. Do I try to not have a ton of sugar? Yes. Do I try to not eat pork? Yes. That's one thing like I don't eat because it's, you know, been taught by quite a few traditions like pork is a bit of a denser energy in the system. So when you're trying to push a lot of prana through the system, port can kind of get in the way of like almost like boulders on a highway. Like I mentioned before, it has to kind of go around it versus some
Mhm.
other meats that aren't quite as dense, you know? So that's why I think some traditions will say no meat because if you're pushing a lot of prana, you know, um, but I did try to be veg for a long time and vegan and the whole thing, but my body just wasn't having it after about 7 years. So I went back to eating meat again, and I feel great. And it's funny, and I've seen over time too, even in the plant dieta, when we've had people come for dieta that were vegetarian. I've seen actually three different people that were like staunch vegetarian for a long time, and the plants kept telling them that they needed to eat meat, which is,
Yeah, but also the quality of the meat in Peru
of
is way,
course,
way higher than in
yeah.
Western world.
Yeah, absolutely, right? So of course, then there's
Healthier.
all those considerations, right? Like where are you getting it and this sort of thing too. And am I blessing it? So yeah, like trying to be as conscious as you can in that way, but there's nothing that I really say for myself I won't eat. I again try to like avoid sugar. I try to avoid pork. Well, I do avoid pork. I don't eat pork. But other than that, yeah, just being like in gratitude when I'm given the things I am given, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. When I went to Ecuador, I met a very amazing woman, and she was a vegetarian in Western world. And then when she went over there, she started eating meat again because it was very healthy and very
Yeah.
energetic.
And I think the
And it
environment
also
you're in.
kept me thinking, that we can change our habits and our mentality about some
Yeah. Well, it depends where
cultural.
you are too. Like, I
Mm.
remember when I spent a lot of time in India, it was like, you don't eat meat. If you've eaten it, you've ruined your karma forever. Like, there was just so much. Like, I remember I got home and I was just like, oh no. Like, I ate hot dogs and craft dinner as a kid. Like, I'm never gonna ascend to anything. And it was really difficult. Like, there was so many of those ideas that were implanted, and I had a really hard time for a couple years, like, moving through that, and all this guilt and all this shame. And it just like, is this helping me? But then you go to a different culture that's just as open to source and they're eating meat. And then you're like, well, wait a minute. These guys are doing the same, like the Marias are doing the same things that the yogis are doing, but they're eating meat. So what's real? What's the right thing?
Yeah,
And I think
yeah,
that's the one beauty of being able to train in all these different cultures is and seeing all the rigid ideas like when they don't meet up in another culture around the world, you're like, ooh, like maybe this doesn't have to be the one way or the highway, you know? It opens your mind, which you have
yeah.
to have an open mind.
Yeah. That's number one thing. I think that what you just said, it could be very eye-opening for all vegans and vegetarians in Western world,
Hmm.
and it could be also a little bit shocking that because like the most conscious people right now trying to be vegan and vegetarian, and what we just said could be completely.
Oh, I mean, some people,
Uh,
they're so rigid in the belief that it's very highly spiritual that they will just shut the door on you right away. And that's okay. Like,
Mhm.
that's what you need to do. And that's where you need to surround yourself with. Like, that's totally, yeah, that's your journey, you know?
Yeah,
And
we
if
are not
people,
judging and not encouraging anyone to change their
no, I mean,
habits and.
I went through it too. I was very staunch and very rigid, and this makes me more spiritual than you. And I did the whole thing in my 20s. Like I did it. So I have a lot of compassion for it, And some people, it's not just a phase; it's
Mhm.
their whole life, and I do respect that. Like it's just it works in their body,
Mhm.
and we're all different. And
So basic.
maybe in 20 lifetimes I'll be there. I don't know, you know? Cool.
So basically, after 7 years, your body made this calling to come back to eating meat, right?
Oh, it was all I could think about. It was all I could
Oh,
think about.
oh
Like
gee.
meat, 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 meat. And I wasn't well. Like I was not feeling very healthy at all. I just felt very like pale, very lethargic, very tired. I just didn't have the energy to keep going. And as soon as I started eating it again, I felt incredible. I was like, ah, okay. Yeah.
Wow.
But it was hard because at the time, one of my like the tradition I was part of, they had a rule that like you can't go past these certain levels if you eat meat. And so I had been with them for 7 years and I was devastated because I was like, wow, this is the end of me and learning these things, you know, because I'm making this choice for my body, which I need. And I had a lot of like, I was very conflicted about the whole thing. And I left the organization. And I've subsequently heard that those rules are no longer in place. I'm like,
So,
very interesting.
so as a goddess, you were able to change the major rules of the
You know,
universe.
it's just like, yeah. So that's a very interesting thing. You know, I went through the whole journey of like what's right, what's wrong, what's the, you know, what makes me, what's going to hinder my path and all the sorts of things, right? But now I don't even, I just, yeah, I just trust.
Love that.
If it arises naturally, it will arise.
Safa, I would like to ask you about this is a very important topic for me. How to create beautiful, magical relationship and romantic, and also those friendship.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think you are the person who is based on your relationship with your husband. You create an amazing magical partnership, and you keep the fire going.
Mm-hmm. I know, 10 years in, and it's like we just met yesterday. It's incredible.
Wow, I love that.
Yeah, super lucky. Um,
Both of you, right? But
yeah.
it's a deep work. It's a
Yeah,
very
and it wasn't
intense.
easy in the beginning. Like there's so many ways, especially when we meet something really beautiful, to that with all the self-sabotage comes up, like, ah, I don't deserve this, or oh, this, you know, they're gonna cheat around the corner, like all the kind of things that like whatever again we bring to the table from our childhood comes to play out, right? And I think the thing for me, what helped, especially when I'm still in the phase of like energies and like at least creating a framework where I could separate the heavy emotions that were between us um, from myself in a sense. So what I mean by that is like seeing that it's here, but it's not necessarily me and it's not necessarily you. Wow, there's a lot of anger in this space right now, or you've disappeared. You're not even here. Where are you? You know, and instead of like at the person and or going into my own hole of not getting what I need and then creating, oh, I need to escape and all the things people do, you know, um, is like coming to the table. What we did over the years is like, wow, like I've noticed that you've disappeared for the last 3 days. How can I help? And so we would use the framework of
Oh,
energy
that's beautiful.
medicine. Like, okay, well, I noticed like, you know, and it's just a part of a training. Like when someone's disappeared, their heart's probably collapsed. When someone's disappeared, their crown's probably collapsed. Or their root, they're because they're scared. And what if instead of like getting in a fight with you and taking everything personally, I'm going to say, sit down and I'm going to just send some love to your heart. Sit down, I'm going
Wow,
to send some love to your
love that.
crown, you know, until I notice that your energy body starts to open again. And every single time there's a very different conversation after that.
That's amazing. I love that.
Every single time. You're like,
Mhm.
oh, there you are. Oh, now we can have a conversation. Yeah. Oh, now you don't think I'm like, because when the energies are very heavy, that person you're perceiving can look really ugly. They can look old. They can look all the things, right? Because there's just this distortion that you're looking through, right? But as soon as you start to move that distortion out of the way and open your heart, compassion leads again, you know? And so I wish that could be something that every couple could learn, like how do I notice this and what can we do as a tool to be able to start to move that energy. So that's why I love energy medicine, even like the basic tools of learning how to see, is my heart open or not, and can I sweep it and put some love into it. And those simple steps, I'd like if everyone just knew that. that would change everything.
Hmm.
you know? So that's like that's another way I see humanity shifting is not only living from the 3D, but also starting to acknowledge that we have an energy body of emotions and a body of mind and starting to live through those as well. And I see that in the younger generation. They're definitely more aware and open to that. Um, but if we start to change the framework of who we are, that we're just, we're not the body, we're not the emotions, we're just the spirit in a glove, right? And then we start to take all the things so personally and as reality. And the whole thing is like seeing the game in front of you, that it's just a game.
Yeah.
It's not even real, like all of it. But that takes a lot of examination. So that's what I would say. That would how I would create a beautiful relationship is start to understand how to move the heavy energies between you rather than saying you are them or they are them.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. The question
Mm.
just popped up to my mind. Are you two together? Are you from time to time? Do you work with ayahuasca in this space on your relationship,
For
like just
sure.
two of you?
For sure. So if
Mm-hmm.
in medicine perception, like you get visions as well, right? So if you
Mm-hmm.
imagine, we sing to the kano of our relationship or the channel of our relationship. And in vision space, if it's looking good, it'll be nice and bright and shiny, and there might be flowers on it, and it's pinned straight. And if there's influences in there, you'll look in medicine space and it'll literally look like it's broken. It'll look black. It'll look like I can't even see it. Or you go into the energy of it and you just feel like hatred, or you feel a lot of the things, all the influences that come in, right? So in ceremony, obviously, you would like recognize that and start to sing and move the energy and call in the light and straighten it and protect it and all the things, right? What you do in ceremony is one way of doing it, right? Or you can do the energy medicine route where you clean the energy between the two of you. Or you can work with heart field where you just sit and imagine that space
Mm-hmm.
between the two of you and you pour that divine love into the pain that you're feeling in that moment or the rejection that you're feeling in that moment, and allow it to grow, to heal, open. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. That
But it takes awareness. It takes that
yeah.
diligence, and maturity to do that rather than just react and fly off the handle, like making the commitment with each other. Like, I'm so triggered in this moment, but instead of going into disappearing, I'm going to try a different approach.
Mm. So now, as I understood, you moved to Mexico and you are planning
hmm
to open a retreat center over there.
Yeah,
Could
we're in
would
the
you?
process of looking right now and looking at the different options right now to make
Mhm.
sure we find the right thing. Um, but yeah, so we're going slow and being patient and making sure again that we're asking all the questions and being led from here rather than here or fear or those sorts of things.
Mhm.
And when we left Peru in November 2023, we said, okay, well, we'll give ourselves a year. And we thought, oh, it's all going to come together and we'll know exactly. And at the end of that year, we didn't know. Um, and there was a lot of work in that year because we live in a society, I feel like, where we have to constantly keep performing and showing we're successful and doing all the things, and having to set all that down and just be like, I'm trusting in the universe's time frame for me. And the moment that I do that, I can see even now, even the work that has to be done within to be able to hold that energy, you know? And so it's like it will happen when the energy is ready to meet it. And I'm in that process right now, and we're very close to it because it's here now. We've had this dream for years, but now it's finally like right there. But it's like, okay, there's still a few things that need to like align but yeah, we're very close.
Was there any specific reason that you decided to leave the Peru and not open
hmm
a retreat center over there?
Yeah. I think we'd been in the valley for quite a long time. One thing is it's farther for people to fly, especially as the times and the economy are changing. We were noticing like, things were still good when we left, but I think right after that, like I have some friends that are running centers and things down there, and it's getting more and more of a challenge to fill. Um, I'm hearing that from quite a few retreat centers. Like there's just not
Hmm.
the same amount of money going around that there has been. So I felt coming a little bit closer to where a lot of our clients are from. Cancun is a very, very quick, direct airport for people to come to because I want it to be accessible. I want people to be able to come, and getting back to that thing where we said, like, can we have scholarships and a way for people to get down here? I just feel like we're more accessible in this area than we are all the way down in the Sacred Valley in Peru. So that was a big driver for us. And the energy here too. They're just like, we've just both got the message at the same time. It's time to go. You've done what you need to do here. Okay.
Okay. So you're letting the universe guide you. So which part of
Yeah.
Mexico? Some areas close to Cancun, Playa del Carmen.
Yeah,
Those are
we're looking in between Playa del Carmen and Tulum, but in the
okay.
jungle, so we're not in the city, you know. Um,
By
but
the
yeah,
by the close to the ocean or
on the
where?
jungle side, but like, quite close to the ocean. It's not that far, but
Hmm.
definitely finding like the right piece of land, and in a way that it's done well and these sorts of things. So yeah, we're in that process right now.
It's a beautiful dream.
Yeah.
You, you think it
And
may
to have a
happen
place
this
too where
year
people,
or more like?
I think hopefully this year, yeah. Because the
Hmm.
other thing too is like we had a lot of people come down to diet with us and train, right? Uh, and we want to have a place to have people to come and spend longer time where they can do the longer dieta, but then also work with guests as well, right? To get that training. So to have that vision to have people to come and, yeah, to diet and to spend longer time there, in nature, off the grid is like the dream.
Yeah,
Yeah.
love that. And what are the other plans and big dreams for you guys for the next couple months, years?
Hmm. I think continuing just to work with our teachers, you
Mhm.
know. I think it's a gift when you find a teacher who really like helps to pave the way in a way so you don't have to make so many mistakes. So I think having someone in your life that does that for you, and is holding true to what they're sharing with you and keeping true to the practices that they're giving you, I think is probably a really important thing in my life to honor that. Um, and then also too, as a person in service, I think one of the biggest things is to find the balance in terms of what you're giving and how you're nourishing yourself. So leaving more time to really make sure that my practices and resting and this sort of thing is being really in balance and being very, very diligent about that. Because I think it's very easy to fall into burnout and to take all the weight of everybody on your shoulders and fall into that trap. And so I think like spending as much time as I can just nourishing myself, yeah, and saying like it can be in balance, and making
Yeah.
that a very important goal.
Yeah, being in balance, that's probably the most important thing and also the biggest challenge, right?
Yes.
Mhm. Um, all right. So thank you so much for this amazing, beautiful conversation. And
Really enjoyed it.
we'll be following you. And I hope you can find an amazing place
Yeah.
in
Hopefully,
near
yeah, very
future.
soon again as it's meant to
Mm.
be. But yeah, when we do are able to announce, we'll definitely let everybody know.
Mhm. If our viewers guess would like to connect with you, where they can find you today.
Yeah, they can find me on my website. It's goldentsunami.co.
Golden. Okay, we'll place the link on the
Yeah.
description.
Yeah.
You also use some social media.
Sorry, I have a tickle in my throat.
Mhm.
On Instagram, it's Golden Tsunami, and Facebook, it's Safa Roberts.
Okay, awesome. So also we'll place all the links. Safa, thank you so much for this amazing, beautiful conversation.
Thank you.
I'm also going to record another podcast today with Ash Ritter. She is a herbalist and ethnobiologist. Uh, do you use some herb in your diet?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You have some favorite herbs?
Motherwort is one of my favorites. Lavender.
Lavender,
Melissa.
Melissa. Oh, for calming down our nervous system, right? All right. Thank you so much from the deep of my heart for this beautiful conversation. And I hope we can visit you one day in your retreat center in Mexico.
Me too. Thank you so much.
Our guest today was Safa Roberts, and there was another Beyond the Courage podcast. Thank you.